In a 9093 exam, the explanation is your closing argument to the judge, the examiner. You aren't just stating facts. You're interpreting the data to prove the writer's guilty intent. The Mystery of the 4th Street Bridge, Part 3, the explanation. The crime scene. This is what we're working on. The point is the accusation. Who did it? The evidence? The fingerprint. What did you find in the text? The explanation. The DNA lab. How do you know it's them? Stay with me. We are studying the last video on Point Evidence Explained. Okay? If you haven't watched the first 2 videos, you gotta go back, otherwise this might not make much sense to you. Especially when I read the text, as promised, in that special voice. So, the fingerprints are bad. The accusation is on the desk, but we're not done yet. Not by a long shot. Now we enter the lab. This is the part that scares the rookies. They look at the evidence and they just repeat what they say. They tell the judge, the writer says the city is ugly. The judge doesn't care what the writer said. The judge wants to know what the writer meant. You have to get under the skin of the language. You have to find the DNA. Why that word? Why that rhythm? What was the writer trying to pull on the reader? If you can't explain the motive, the suspect walks. If you can, you get a conviction. You get the marks. Put on your gloves, kid. We're going to see what this case is really made of. This is the text, and again, I urge you guys to pause here. Okay? Annotate the text again, see if you find anything new. But this is the text teacher Jem wrote for us to basically do this point evidence explain. And again, guys, I warn you, go back if you haven't watched part 1 and part 2, please. Okay, it's definitely to your advantage. Okay. And as promised, I'm going to do it in the voice that everybody's been asking me to do it in. The rain didn't wash the city clean. It just turned the grime into a darker shade of ugly. I stood in the doorway of a boarded up deli, watching the neon sign across the street flicker like a dying heart. Snap, buzz, silence. The fog was thick, a gray wool blanket that muffled the sins of the sidewalk. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, a lonely, rising shriek that tore through the humidity before fading into the gloom. My cigarette, sultry orange spark, the only honest thing left in this zip code. Then she appeared. She stepped out of the shadows of the 4th Street Bridge, her silhouette sharp enough to cut glass. She moved with a calculated grace, the rhythmic click-clack of her heels echoing against the damp cobblestones like a countdown. She wasn't just walking, she was invading. She stopped 10 paces away, the mist clinging to her silk trench coat like a desperate plea. "Thorn?" she asked. Her voice was smoke and honey, sweet, but dangerous. I didn't answer. I just watched the way the light hit that silver tucked into her belt. In this town, you didn't ask questions, unless you already knew the answers were going to hurt. Okay, so, point, evidence, explain. Okay, So now we're going to secure our conviction. The big idea? This is where we analyze the fingerprints. Part 2. We don't just look at the quote. We break it down to see what makes it tick. Okay? So the goal here is to show the judge exactly how the writer manipulates the reader's mind to realize a specific effect. What is the impact on the reader? And I got a video on this specifically. How to figure out that impact on the reader. Okay? Because everything that the writer does is they are trying to manipulate us as the reader. Click, click. The so what test. And you should do this. Okay, this is a brilliant strategy. Every time you write an explanation, your point, evidence, explain, your explanation, imagine the judge is looking at you and saying, so what? What does this matter? I don't know if a judge would speak like that. So what? What does this matter? It's a very posh judge. Okay? So remember, you are analyzing the effect on the reader. That's your job. This is where you get the big marks. Okay, thinking about our text. Okay, does does this emphasize the tension? Okay, does it characterize the city as a predator? Okay, as a detective, and that's what you are as a student. You're a detective. Use those active verbs. This evokes, this underscores, this subverts, this alienates. Okay, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, 4 or 5 weeks ago, we did a video on using the correct language to analyze text. It's going to impress your examiner. Okay, so don't summarize, analyze. Don't summarize, analyze. Okay. And to do that, what you have to do is, okay, you don't summarize the whole quote. You analyze its connotations. You find that specific word or a phrase. So thinking about our text, Midnight in Neon, that teacher Jem wrote, okay, the evidence is, so we've got our point, the evidence is dying heart. So your analysis could be something like, the word dying connotes finality, while heart suggests the city's core is failing. Together, they evoke a visceral sense of terminal decay. Remember, we spoke about using language. It takes practice that shows your understanding. Okay. Multiple motives. If you've ever watched good detective movies, and I love my detective movies, there's never always one correct motive. Okay? The explanation is subjective. Any of you folks out there wanting to become a lawyer, you'll quickly learn that every lawyer is a liar. They are trying to persuade the judge, they're trying to persuade the jury that their point of view is the correct one. Okay? Opposing counsel will argue different points of view. So it doesn't matter. There's not one correct point of view. You want to use the technical lexis, the technical language to support your claim. This will convince the judge. This will convince the examiner. Use those modal verbs. Okay? The writer suggests. Okay? This shows that you are an expert investigator analyzing all the angles. You've thought about lots of different possibilities. The most important part here is the examiner does not know what the effect is, because we are all different. Every device will connote something else. But if you use the right language, you will sound convincing, just like a lawyer making a case, okay, to the judge. So, the rain has finally stopped, but the city still felt like it was drowning. I sat in the office. The glow of the neon sign bleeding through the blinds. On my desk sat the file, the 4th Street Bridge. I'd made the accusation early on. I knew the writer was guilty of premeditated atmospheric construction. I recognized the signs, the way they used personification to turn a simple rainstorm into a predator. That was my point. I didn't just guess. I wanted to emphasize how the motive was to make the reader feel the cold, stagnant weight of the city's soul. But an accusation is a hollow thing without the fingerprints. I'd spent hours on that bridge, analyzing the linguistic grime. I didn't haul away the whole crime scene. I was forensic. I bagged only the smoking, the silk trench coat, and their desperate plea, and kept the evidence short and sharp. Then came the long night in the DNA lab. Under the microscope, those words started to talk. I didn't just repeat what I saw, I analyzed the connotation of silk, the lethal elegance of it, and how it juxtaposed with the grime of the street. I explained how sibilance whispered in the reader's ear. That was the explanation, the bridge between the evidence and the truth. I walked into the courtroom this morning. The judge, a tough examiner, didn't say a word. He just organized my point, verified my evidence, and realized the strength of my explanation. He slammed the gavel down. Case closed. The mark was an A. I walked out into the fog, realizing that in this town, the analysis never ends. The case is closed. But the precinct is always open. If we helped you get a conviction today, stamp a like on this file. It's the only pay we need to keep the lights on. Don't let your next essay become a cold case. Hit subscribe and join the most elite agency in the 9093 English Cambridge exams world. And if you know somebody who's wandering the streets without a clue, share this dossier. Keep your eyes open, your Lexus sharp. I'll see you in the next investigation. Case closed.